The first time the Duke of Vexine saw Evangeline Garland, she was standing in the rain with a bruise on her face and a ruined name. The second time, she was unconscious in a locked room at a country inn while a stranger searched her belongings. Someone wanted to know what evidence she had carried out of Hartley Court. Hours earlier, the Duke had found her abandoned beside the road. She refused to tell him who had hurt her, but he recognized the silence of a woman who had learned that powerful men protected one another. He arranged a safe room, placed his own servants outside her door, and promised she would not be troubled. The intruder entered through the window anyway. When the Duke caught him, the man carried no weapon and stole no jewelry. He had taken only a damp scrap of paper from Evangeline's glove, a fragment bearing 3 figures from her inheritance accounts. The Duke looked at the terrified young woman and finally understood. Her public disgrace was not the crime. It was the disguise someone had created to conceal one. Only that morning, the rain had turned the churchyard road into a ribbon of black mud when Isambard Vane, Duke of Vexine, first noticed her beneath a leafless elm at the boundary of the Hartley estate. She wore no cloak. Her pale gown was soaked to the knees, and mud had ruined the thin slippers on her feet. The wind pulled strands of dark hair loose from their pins, but she did not lift a hand to gather them. A woman did not stand alone on an empty road in a cold spring rain unless she had been put out of doors or had nowhere left willing to receive her. Isambard had ridden past many kinds of misery during his 36 years. Some had worn soldiers' uniforms, others had hidden beneath silk gowns, polite smiles, and family crests. He had trained himself to recognize suffering without allowing it to reach him. This woman stopped him as though an unseen hand had closed around his reins. He dismounted before caution could advise him otherwise. His boots sank into the mud as he crossed the shallow ditch. The great grey horse followed at his shoulder, quiet and watchful, while the reins remained looped loosely around Isambard's gloved hand. The woman heard him when he was several paces away. She turned sharply. He saw at once that she had been crying, though she was not crying now. Her eyes were grey and swollen, yet they met his with a steadiness that seemed almost defiant. A yellowing bruise marked her left cheekbone. Around her right wrist lay the fresh red impressions of a man's fingers. She drew that wrist against her body when she caught him looking. The movement was small, but it told Isambard more than an accusation would have done. She was not merely ashamed of the injury. She had learned to expect that anyone who saw it would either doubt her or blame her for provoking it. "Madam," he said. She flinched at the sound of his voice. Isambard stopped immediately. He lowered his hands to his sides and left several yards between them. "Who did this to you?" The question was so quiet that Evangeline almost mistook it for kindness. She studied the stranger standing in the rain. His dark tailcoat was already wet across the shoulders. He was tall, broad, and carried himself with the controlled authority of a man accustomed to being obeyed. Nothing in his manner was openly threatening. That meant very little. Every man who had approached her during the last 3 days had begun with a civil word. One had offered advice before closing his door. Another had expressed regret while ordering a servant to escort her from the steps. Julian Fenn had spoken most gently of all before destroying her. "No one, sir," she answered. Her voice remained cultured despite her exhaustion. "No one did anything to me that the world would call a crime. That is not what I asked." Something changed in her face. For one dangerous moment, the composure she had built through 3 days of rejection nearly failed her. Her lips parted, but no answer came. She looked toward the Hartley estate, whose chimneys were barely visible beyond the trees, then lowered her gaze again. Isambard did not move closer. He had learned from frightened horses and frightened soldiers that stillness could be more persuasive than speech. He allowed her to measure him against the cold, the road, and whatever waited behind her. At last, he removed his cloak. She stepped back. He held it out without approaching. "You are wet through. If you remain here, you will take a fever. Whoever put you on this road will then be spared the inconvenience of wondering what became of you." Her eyes lifted to his. "There is an inn at Marlow Cross," he continued. "The woman who keeps it is respectable and incapable of being intimidated by any man beneath the rank of the Almighty. You may have a private room there. You need not tell me your name. You need not tell me anything until you choose to do so. And what will you expect in return? Nothing. No man offers protection for nothing. Then consider it an act of selfishness. I do not wish to ride this road tomorrow. and find that you have died beside it." The corner of her mouth trembled. It might have become a laugh if she had possessed the strength. "You speak as though you may command whether I live or die." "I am accustomed to commanding what can be commanded." "And who are you, sir?" Isambard Vane. Her expression did not change. "The Duke of Vexine," he added. This time, recognition struck visibly. She looked toward his grey horse, his plain but perfectly cut coat, and the signet ring upon his hand. His land bordered Hartley property 3 miles north. His name was spoken throughout the county, although the man himself was rarely seen. Some called him cold, others called him dangerous. Sir Roland had once described him as a wolf who had learned to wear a cravat. Evangeline wondered whether one wolf could be trusted merely because another had bitten her first. The Duke placed his cloak on the low stone boundary marker between them and stepped away from it. "You may put it on yourself," he said. "I will not touch you." That decided her, not because she trusted him, but because he had noticed her fear and altered his conduct without making her explain it. She crossed to the stone and lifted the cloak. It was heavy, warm from his body, and carried the faint scents of rain, leather, and cedar. As she drew it around her shoulders, something slipped from her right hand. A small, wet fragment of paper landed in the mud. Evangeline bent for it at once, but exhaustion made her stumble. The Duke caught her elbow. She recoiled with such terror that he released her immediately. "I beg your pardon." The apology came without irritation or wounded pride. That surprised her almost as much as the assistance. She snatched up the paper and folded it inside her glove. The movement was too hurried to conceal its importance. Isambard pretended not to have seen the ink upon it. 3 figures had been written in a narrow column: £4,800, £7,250, £30,000. The final amount had been underlined twice. A carriage wheel sounded in the distance. Evangeline went rigid. A black travelling carriage appeared around the bend from Hartley Court. It bore no crest, but she recognized the pair of chestnut horses and the driver's stooped shoulders. Mr. Pike. Sir Roland's senior footman had stood outside the blue drawing-room while Julian staged the scene that ruined her. Later, he had held the front door open while she was driven into the rain. The carriage slowed as it passed. Pike looked directly at Evangeline. Then his gaze moved to the Duke. The blood drained from his face. He snapped the reins so hard that the horses lurched forward, throwing mud behind them as the carriage hurried away. "Do you know that man?" Isambard asked. No, it was a poor lie, and both of them knew it. The Duke looked after the departing carriage. "He knows you." Evangeline clutched the edges of his cloak together. "Please, take me to the inn." He could have demanded the truth. Most men in his position would have considered answers the proper price of assistance. Instead, he whistled softly to his horse. "You cannot ride in your condition," he said. "My carriage is 1/2 a mile behind me. My steward will be in it, along with an elderly housekeeper who has disapproved of me since infancy. Neither will allow me to behave improperly." "You arrange your references very efficiently, Your Grace." The dry remark was the first sign of spirit he had heard from her. "I have often found them necessary." His carriage arrived within several minutes. Mrs. Bellamy took one look at the woman beneath the Duke's cloak and ordered the men to turn their backs while she helped Evangeline inside. Isambard remained on horseback and rode beside the carriage. He asked no questions during the journey. That silence frightened Evangeline less than sympathy would have done. Sympathy often asked to be rewarded with confession. His silence simply left the door open. At Marlow Cross, Mrs. Agnes Bell received them with the broad shoulders and suspicious gaze of a woman who had spent 30 years refusing rooms to drunken officers and travelling salesmen. "She needs a fire, broth, and dry clothing," Isambard said. "I have eyes, Your Grace. A physician should examine her wrist. I have judgment as well. No visitors are to be admitted." Mrs. Bell folded her arms. "Do you intend to frighten every guest out of my establishment?" "If necessary." Evangeline swayed beside them. Mrs. Bell caught her before the Duke could move. "Enough growling. The lady needs rest, not the sound of 2 people arranging her life over her head." She led Evangeline upstairs to a small chamber at the back of the inn. The room was clean, warm, and overlooked a kitchen garden enclosed by a brick wall. Mrs. Bell helped her remove the ruined gown and brought a plain nightdress belonging to her daughter. When the older woman reached for her bruised wrist, Evangeline pulled away. "I shall not ask," Mrs. Bell said, "but I shall leave salve beside the bed." That nearly broke her. Cruelty could be resisted. Ordinary kindness found the cracks she had been trying to hold closed. "Thank you. Sleep first. Thank me when you can stand without trembling." Downstairs, Isambard spoke privately with his steward. "Hollis, send a man after the black carriage, without approaching it. Observe only. I want to know where it goes and whom the driver meets." Hollis glanced toward the ceiling. "Do we know the lady's name?" "No." "Do we know what happened to her?" "No." "Do we know whether she has brought trouble with her?" Isambard removed his wet gloves. "That question has already been answered." Hollis knew his master well enough not to press further. The Duke hired the 2 rooms adjoining Evangeline's chamber and placed a trusted footman in the corridor. He then sent for Dr. Mercer and instructed Mrs. Bell that the physician was to examine the woman only if she consented. By dusk, the rain had strengthened. Dr. Mercer came and went, reporting that the stranger was exhausted, bruised, and dangerously chilled, but had suffered no injury likely to threaten her life. The mark upon her cheek had been caused several days earlier. The injury to her wrist was recent. "Someone gripped her hard enough to stop her leaving," the physician said. "Could it have been accidental?" Dr. Mercer stared at him. "You did not summon me because you believed it was accidental." "No. She also has an older bruise beneath her shoulder." She would not explain it. The Duke's jaw tightened. "I advised rest," the physician continued. "More importantly, I advised that she be given choices. Whatever happened, the lady has lately had very few of them." Isambard looked toward the staircase. "Then choices are what she shall have." He intended to leave her undisturbed until morning. At midnight, the footman outside her room heard glass crack. He called out once. A body struck the floor inside. Isambard was already climbing the stairs when the man hammered upon Evangeline's locked door. No answer came from within. "Break it." The footman drove his shoulder into the wood. The lock held through the first blow and split on the second. A dark figure crouched beside the bed. Evangeline lay motionless against the pillows, while one pale arm hung over the edge. Her travelling dress, the only possession she had kept from Hartley Court, had been pulled from a chair and torn open at the seams. The intruder spun toward the broken window. Isambard crossed the room before he could escape. He caught the man by the back of his coat and dragged him away from the sill. They struck the floor together. The stranger swung wildly, but Isambard blocked the blow and drove his forearm across the man's throat. "Search him." The footman found no pistol, knife, purse, or jewelry, only a folded piece of damp paper. Isambard took it and opened it beside the lamp. 3 figures appeared in faded brown ink: £4,800, £7,250, £30,000, the same figures he had glimpsed on the road. Behind him, Evangeline gasped. She had awakened, her eyes fixed upon the paper in his hand, and fear flooded her face. "No," she whispered. The captured man stopped struggling. Isambard turned toward her. "What is it?" For several seconds, she could not answer. Then she pushed herself upright and drew the blanket around her trembling body. "My father left me £30,000 and an estate called Willowmere." The Duke glanced down at the accounts. "And the other figures?" "Withdrawals my guardian swore had never been made." "Who is your guardian?" She looked at the intruder on the floor. He had gone pale. Sir Rowland Hartley. At the sound of the name, the man renewed his struggle. The footman forced him down again, but a small metal object fell from his waistcoat and rolled across the floor. It stopped beside the Duke's boot. A silver button bearing the Hartley crest. Evangeline stared at it. "I was accused of stealing that button," she said. "They claimed it was found in my room after I fled." Isambard picked it up between 2 fingers. "Yet this man carried it here." The intruder closed his eyes. The Duke looked from the button to the torn dress, then to the scrap of figures someone had risked breaking into a guarded room to recover. The shape of the matter became clear. Not every detail, but enough. A guardian had control of a young woman's fortune. The accounts contained withdrawals he denied. Before she could demand a proper examination, her reputation was destroyed, her home taken from her, and the county persuaded not to believe a word she said. Now one of Hartley's men had entered her room to steal the only figures she had saved. Isambard rose slowly. "What is your name?" he asked. She hesitated only a moment. "Evangeline Garland." He crossed to the bed and placed the damp fragment upon the table within her reach. "It remains yours, Miss Garland. You believe me? I believe someone feared those numbers enough to follow you through a storm and enter a locked room for them." Her lips trembled. "That is not the same as believing me." "No," Isambard said. "It is the beginning of proving you." He turned toward the captured man. "Take him downstairs. Keep him alive, sober, and very conscious. At dawn, I intend to learn who sent him." The intruder began to plead. Isambard did not raise his voice. "If you lie to me, I shall know. If you tell me the truth, I may allow the law to reach you before Sir Roland does." That silenced him. When the men had removed the prisoner, the Duke remained by the broken doorway. He did not come nearer to Evangeline's bed. "You are not safe here," he said. Her hand closed over the paper. "There is nowhere safe for me." "There is now." She searched his expression for triumph, possession, or the expectation that she should be grateful. She found only controlled anger and something beneath it that frightened her precisely because she wanted to trust it. "Where?" "Vexine Abbey." "Your home?" "Yes." "You do not know me." "No, but Sir Roland does, and he sent a man into this room despite my servants. That makes the matter mine until you are strong enough to make it entirely yours again." Evangeline lowered her eyes to the three figures. 3 days ago, every man she trusted had abandoned her. Tonight, the most feared man in the county had broken down a door to protect the proof they wanted destroyed. Outside, the rain struck the window and blew through the broken pane. The Duke removed his coat and fastened it across the opening to block the cold, never once stepping close enough to make her recoil. Then he returned to the doorway. "Try to sleep, Miss Garland. No one will enter this room again." "How can you promise that?" His face became very still. "Because by morning, every man involved will know that reaching you now requires going through me." By dawn, the rain had weakened to a fine grey mist, but no one at the Marlow Cross Inn had slept. The man captured in Evangeline's chamber sat tied to a chair in the private parlour below. His name was Thomas Rudge, though it had taken Isambard less than 10 minutes to establish that the name was false. His boots bore the mark of a Hartley stable. The silver button in his pocket had come from a Hartley livery coat, and the mud dried upon his trousers contained the white chalk found only along the southern path from Hartley Court. Yet the man insisted that no one had sent him. "I saw the lady on the road," he said. "I thought she might have valuables." "You entered through an upper window to steal a piece of wet paper," Isambard replied. "You left her purse untouched. I heard paper could be valuable." "Then you are the first thief in England to prefer arithmetic to gold." Hollis concealed a smile. The Duke did not. He stood near the fire, with one hand resting upon the mantel, his expression so controlled that Rudge appeared more frightened by the absence of anger than he might have been by a shouted threat. "Sir Roland will deny knowing you," Isambard said. "If you return to Hartley Court, he will wonder what you confessed while under my roof. Men who steal £30,000 rarely leave uncertain witnesses alive." Rudge's eyes moved toward the window. It was the first honest reaction he had shown. "I never said Sir Roland sent me." "No, I did." The prisoner swallowed. Isambard allowed the silence to lengthen. Across the room, Hollis laid 3 objects upon the table: the silver button, the scrap from Evangeline's accounts, and a narrow iron tool found beneath the broken window. "You entered using a glazier's lever," the Duke continued. "You knew which chamber she occupied, although she arrived here only yesterday. Someone at Hartley Court saw her enter my carriage and sent word ahead. That person also knew she had taken part of an account page. You did not come to discover what she possessed. You came for one specific object." Rudge stared at the floor. "Who told you the paper was hidden in her glove?" "No one." Isambard lifted the silver button. "Then explain why you carried this." "It is mine. It bears Sir Roland Hartley's crest. I worked for him once. Yesterday." Rudge's jaw tightened. The Duke crossed the room and placed the button directly before him. "Miss Garland says she was accused of stealing one identical to this. I believe the object played some part in the scene created to disgrace her. You were sent to recover the account fragment and leave this button among her belongings. When it was found, Hartley would claim she had stolen again. Even beneath my protection, she would appear guilty. Rudge looked up before he could stop himself. That single glance confirmed more than a confession. Isambard straightened. Thank you. For what? For telling me I am correct. The prisoner's face collapsed. Isambard moved to the door. Hollis, give him breakfast. Rudge stared after him. You are letting me go. No, you said. I promised nothing. After breakfast, a magistrate will hear how you broke into a woman's room and rendered her unconscious while searching her clothes. I never touched her. The Duke stopped. The denial burst from Rudge with genuine panic. She was unconscious when I entered, he continued. I swear it. The window was already unlatched. I only pushed it open. Isambard turned slowly. How did you know? Know what? That she would be unconscious. Rudge's breathing changed. Hollis stepped closer to the chair. Who drugged her? Isambard asked. I do not know. Who opened the window? I do not know. Who told you when to enter? Rudge closed his mouth. The Duke studied him for a moment and recognized the point beyond which fear would produce invention instead of truth. He left Hollis with strict instructions that the prisoner was neither to escape nor be harmed. Upstairs, Evangeline sat before the fire, wearing one of Mrs. Bell's plain wool dresses. The garment was too broad at the shoulders and too short at the ankles, yet it was warm. Her damp hair had been braided loosely down her back. Mrs. Bell placed a tray beside her. You must eat. I am not hungry. That is fortunate. My porridge has never depended upon appetite for its success. Despite everything, Evangeline smiled. She managed 3 spoonfuls before the Duke knocked upon the broken door. Mrs. Bell admitted him only after receiving Evangeline's permission. Isambard remained beside the threshold. The man downstairs claims you were already unconscious when he entered. I was asleep. Dr. Mercer said you had been given nothing stronger than willowbark tea. I did not drink it. Mrs. Bell frowned. You drank the broth. Evangeline looked at the unfinished bowl from the previous evening. The older woman's face hardened. I prepared it myself. I do not accuse you, but someone reached it after it left my kitchen. Mrs. Bell lifted the bowl and smelled it. There is nothing strange in the scent. May I see it? Evangeline asked. The Duke brought the bowl to her, but did not place it directly into her hands until she nodded. She tilted the remaining broth toward the light. A faint, dark residue clung to the glazed rim beneath the handle. She touched it with the tip of the spoon and examined the color. My father suffered from sleeplessness after my mother died, she said. His physician sometimes gave him laudanum. It leaves a bitterness, but strong rosemary can disguise it. Mrs. Bell drew a sharp breath. There was rosemary in the broth. Could it have been medicine left upon the bowl by accident? Isambard asked. No. Evangeline handed it back. The residue is on the outer rim. Someone painted it there after the broth was poured. I would not taste it until I drank. The room fell silent. Isambard had expected to find a frightened, helpless young woman. Instead, she had identified the method used against her with the calm precision of someone long accustomed to noticing what others ignored. How did the bowl reach this room? He asked. Mrs. Bell's expression turned grim. My kitchen maid carried it upstairs. She left it outside when your footman stopped her for questioning. He brought it inside himself. My man never left the corridor. Then the drug was added before the maid arrived upstairs. Who entered your kitchen? Half the inn at supper. Evangeline placed her hands around the warm cup beside her. Then whoever arranged the intrusion may still be here. A floorboard creaked in the passage. The Duke opened the door immediately. The corridor was empty. At its far end, a narrow service staircase descended toward the kitchen. A strip of pale fabric vanished around the corner. Hollis came up the main stairs at that moment. Your Grace, the prisoner, is asking to speak with you. Why? He heard Mrs. Bell's kitchen maid crying downstairs. He says she is not the person we should be questioning. Isambard glanced back at Evangeline. Lock this door. No. His gaze sharpened. She stood, though the effort left her pale. That is precisely what Sir Roland always said before he concealed something from me. Remain in your room, Evangeline. This does not concern you. Then he moved money, dismissed servants, and wrote letters in my name. This man may be dangerous. So may the person who drugged me. Locking me away did not prevent either of them from reaching me last night. The truth of it struck cleanly. Isambard could have ordered her to remain. His title gave him authority over most people in the building, and his size made resistance appear foolish. But Dr. Mercer's warning returned to him. Whatever had happened, the lady had lately been given very few choices. "What do you propose?" he asked. "I will come downstairs. You can barely stand. Then I will sit." Mrs. Bell muttered something about stubborn aristocrats, although Evangeline had never claimed to be one. The Duke offered his arm. She looked at it, and he felt the exact moment her fear returned. Rather than moving closer, he turned slightly, so she could take or refuse it, without embarrassment. After a pause, her fingers rested upon his sleeve. It was the first time she had touched him willingly. They descended together. Rudge sat where they had left him. When Evangeline entered, shame flickered across his face. She recognized him now as one of the hired stable hands occasionally employed at Hartley Court. He had been present during the week preceding her disgrace, though he had never worn the household livery. The kitchen maid stood near the wall, weeping into her apron. "She did not drug the broth," Rudge said. "Then who did?" Isambard asked. "I do not know her name." The Duke's patience thinned. "You appear afflicted by an extraordinary ignorance concerning your own crimes. A woman met me behind the church before sunset. She gave me the glazier's tool and told me which window to use. She said the lady would be asleep after 11. "What woman?" "She wore a green travelling veil. I could not see her face." Evangeline's fingers tightened around the Duke's sleeve. "What else?" she asked. Rudge looked at her but quickly lowered his gaze. "She said to take the account paper and leave the button in the seam of your dress." "Why?" "So it would be discovered when you accused someone of entering your chamber. She said people would believe you had invented the intrusion to hide another theft. The plan was simple because it relied upon a lie already accepted by the county. Once, a woman had been branded dishonest. Every attempt to defend herself could be made to look like another deception." Evangeline released the Duke's arm and approached the table. "Did the woman speak with a local accent?" Rudge considered. "Not quite. She sounded educated." "Did she wear gloves?" "Yes." "What color?" "Gray." "Was there anything unusual about them?" The prisoner frowned. "One was torn near the thumb. I saw a dark mark beneath it. A stain." "Perhaps." Evangeline went still. Isambard watched the color drain from her face. "You know her?" "I may." "Who?" She did not answer immediately. Her eyes remained fixed upon the silver button. "On the night I was disgraced, Lady Cecily Ashcombe was present at Hartley Court. She claimed to have discovered me in the blue drawing room with Julian Fenn. When she seized my arm, her right glove tore against my bracelet. And the mark beneath it? Not a stain. A birthmark shaped like a crescent." Rudge stared at her. "I saw something dark near the thumb. It might have been that." "Why would Lady Cecily help Sir Rowland?" Isambard asked. Evangeline's voice became quieter. "Because Julian Fenn is her nephew." The Duke understood at once. Julian, Evangeline's former betrothed, had broken their engagement after she was discovered in a compromising situation. Lady Cecily had served as the respectable witness, whose presence transformed gossip into accepted truth. If aunt and nephew had helped Sir Rowland ruin Evangeline, the conspiracy reached beyond one corrupt guardian. It included a family with enough standing to control how the county understood the scandal. Rudge shifted in the chair. "I have told you everything. You said Sir Rowland might kill me." "He might," Isambard replied. "Then protect me." "Why should I?" "Because I can prove who paid me." Every person in the room became still. Rudge nodded toward his left boot. Hollis removed it and examined the lining. A narrow slit had been cut beneath the heel. Inside lay a folded banknote and a small square of blue paper. Isambard opened the paper. 4 words had been written upon it. "After midnight. Take the figures." No name appeared beneath the instruction, but a faint impression remained where the paper had rested beneath another page, while someone wrote upon it. Evangeline held the note toward the window. "May I have a pencil?" Hollis brought one from the innkeeper's desk. She laid another sheet over the message and shaded it gently. Lines slowly emerged from the pressure marks beneath. They formed part of an address. Number 14. Bellwether Lane. Evangeline looked at the Duke. "Sir Rowland keeps no property there." "Who does?" "Julian Fenn." Rudge closed his eyes as though the final protection around him had fallen. Isambard folded the message and placed it inside his waistcoat. "You will accompany us to Vexine Abbey," he said. "You will be kept under guard until a magistrate can take your sworn statement. Will you protect me from Hartley? If you tell the full truth, I have." "No. You have told us what fear forced from you. The full truth includes every person you met, every coin you accepted, and everything you saw at Hartley Court before Miss Garland was expelled." Rudge glanced toward Evangeline. "There was one other thing," he whispered. "The woman in the green veil said the account fragment was not the only paper missing." Evangeline's breath caught. "What paper?" the Duke demanded. Rudge shook his head. "She called it the codicil." The word struck Evangeline harder than the discovery of the drug. Her father had added a codicil to his will 6 weeks before his death. It stated that if irregularities were discovered in the management of her trust, control would pass from Sir Rowland to an independent solicitor named Mr. Aldous Gray. Sir Rowland had told her that the document had never been properly witnessed and therefore possessed no legal force. But if his agents were still searching for it, then the codicil might be valid. More importantly, it might still exist. "Where was it kept?" Isambard asked. "In my father's writing cabinet at Willowmere. I saw him place it inside a hidden drawer. And who knew? My father, Mr. Gray." "Sir Rowland?" "He learned of it after my father died. By then, the cabinet had been moved to Hartley Court." The Duke looked toward Hollis. "Send riders to Vexine Abbey. Double the men at every gate and prepare rooms in the East Wing. No one is to know Miss Garland is travelling with us." Evangeline turned to him. "We must go to Willowmere. You are in no condition to search an abandoned estate. If the cabinet remains there, it will not. Sir Rowland would have removed or destroyed it. He may have removed the cabinet, but he would not understand its mechanism. My father designed the hidden drawer himself. It cannot be opened by force without damaging what is inside, and Sir Rowland would not risk destroying a document he wished to examine. Then where would he keep it?" "Hartley Court." Rudge made a strangled sound. Isambard turned. "What do you know?" "The blue cabinet," he said. "2 men carried it into Sir Rowland's private library last week. He ordered everyone out while a locksmith examined it." Evangeline's fear changed into resolve. For 3 days, she had possessed nothing except a torn account fragment and a story no one believed. Now she had a witness, a payment note linked to Julian Fenn, and reason to believe the document capable of freeing her inheritance remained intact. She met the Duke's gaze. "I need to return to Hartley Court." "No, you asked what I proposed, and I have heard it. The codicil is the only document that can remove my fortune from Sir Rowland's control. You will not enter the house of a man who struck you and sent an agent after you. Then help me enter without his knowledge." Isambard stared at her. Behind the exhaustion and borrowed clothing, he saw the woman she must have been before the county stripped away her security. She was frightened, but fear no longer determined her direction. "You have known me less than a day," she said. "You told me that this matter was yours until I became strong enough to make it mine again. I did. Then do not take it from me now." The rebuke was quiet, but it landed with more force than defiance. Isambard had spent years believing protection meant placing himself between danger and those who could not resist it. Evangeline demanded something more difficult, that he stand beside her while she chose which dangers were worth facing. "We go first to Vexine Abbey," he said. "You will rest and tell me everything that happened at Hartley Court. We will learn the servants' movements, the entrances to the library, and whether Sir Rowland has discovered Rudge's failure. And then, if the cabinet is still there, we will recover it." "We?" The Duke's expression hardened into something almost grimly amused. "You did not imagine I would allow you to break into Hartley Court alone." For the first time since he had found her beneath the elm, Evangeline smiled without bitterness. It transformed her face. The moment lasted only a heartbeat, but Isambard felt it with an intensity he did not understand. Then hoofbeats sounded outside the inn. Hollis crossed to the window and looked down. A black carriage had stopped in the yard. Its door opened, and a man in Hartley livery stepped into the mist, carrying a sealed letter. "He has come under a flag of truce," Hollis said. "There are no flags of truce between gentlemen who send intruders through bedroom windows," Isambard replied. The servant entered the inn and waited below while Hollis retrieved the letter. The Hartley seal remained unbroken, but the name written across the front was not the Duke's. It was Evangeline's. She opened it herself. The message contained only 2 lines. Return the account fragment before noon, and no charge will be brought against the woman who sheltered you. Refuse, and Mrs. Anne Garland will be arrested for helping you steal it. Evangeline gripped the table. Anne Garland was her father's widowed sister, the only relative who had tried to receive her after the scandal. Evangeline had never reached her cottage. Sir Rowland's men had intercepted her on the road and warned that approaching Anne would bring ruin upon them both. "He has my aunt," she whispered. The Duke took the letter and examined the seal. "Not yet." "How can you know?" "Because if he had arrested her, he would have written that he had done so. This is a deadline intended to make you surrender before we discover what the figures mean. He will harm her. Only if he believes doing so will help him. That is not a comfort." "No," Isambard said. "It is a weakness we can use." He turned to Hollis. "Send 2 riders to Mrs. Garland's cottage by separate roads. If Hartley's men are watching it, they are to observe and report. If she is in danger, bring her directly to Vexine Abbey." The Hartley messenger shifted nervously near the doorway. Isambard looked at him. "You will carry my answer." The servant bowed. "Tell Sir Rowland that Miss Garland will not return the paper." Evangeline stared at him. The Duke continued before she could object. "Tell him that if Mrs. Garland is threatened, detained, or frightened in any way, I shall consider it an attack upon a person under my protection. He knows what that means." The messenger's face paled. "Your Grace, Sir Rowland may ask whether Miss Garland is here." "Then tell him the truth." Everyone in the room waited. Isambard's gaze moved to Evangeline. "Tell him she is no longer alone." The Hartley messenger carried those words back through the mist, and before the black carriage had vanished beyond the inn-yard, Isambard ordered their own departure. He would not risk remaining at Marlow Cross after Sir Rowland had proved that he could reach the kitchen, bribe a servant, and place laudanum upon Evangeline's bowl. Rudge was transferred to a closed carriage under guard. Mrs. Bell prepared food for the journey, then personally inspected every flask and parcel before allowing it to leave her kitchen. Evangeline stood near the inn door, wearing the borrowed brown dress beneath the Duke's cloak. She looked stronger than she had beneath the elm, but the shadows beneath her eyes revealed how little rest she had found. Hollis approached the Duke quietly. "2 of our men have gone to Mrs. Garland's cottage. Another is following the Hartley messenger." "Good. And Rudge?" "He rides with us. If Hartley attempts to recover him on the road." Isambard glanced toward the armed men surrounding the second carriage. "Then Hartley will lose more than an unsuccessful witness." Evangeline heard him. "You speak of conflict as though you expect it. I expect men like Sir Rowland to mistake restraint for uncertainty, and what happens when they learn otherwise? They usually regret the lesson." She could not tell whether he intended reassurance or warning. Mrs. Bell pressed a basket into Evangeline's hands. "There is bread, cheese, and a bottle of water. The bottle has been sealed with blue wax. If the seal is broken, do not drink it." Evangeline embraced her. The gesture surprised them both. "Thank you for believing that I might need help." Mrs. Bell's expression softened. "I did not need to believe anything except what my eyes showed me. A woman arrived hurt and hungry. That should have been enough for every door you knocked upon." It was the simplest kindness Evangeline had received in 3 days, and it nearly reduced her to tears. She entered the Duke's carriage before they could fall. Isambard took the seat opposite her, rather than the place beside her. The decision did not escape her notice. He left the door open while Hollis placed a warmed brick beneath her feet, then waited until she agreed before closing it. The carriage began moving north. For several miles, neither of them spoke. Evangeline watched wet hedges and empty fields pass beyond the glass. Each turning wheel carried her farther from Hartley Court, yet the dread inside her did not lessen. Isambard opened the food basket and offered it to her. "I cannot eat." "You said the same of Mrs. Bell's porridge." Her assessment of its quality was accurate. He almost smiled. "The bread appears less dangerous." She broke off a small piece, more to satisfy him than from hunger. "You said you needed to know everything that happened at Hartley Court," she said. "Only what you choose to tell me. If we are to recover the codicil, you must understand the people guarding it." He waited. Evangeline looked down at the bread between her fingers. "My parents died within 8 months of one another. My mother first, then my father from a fever contracted while travelling home from London. I was 17. How did Sir Rowland become your guardian?" He and my father had been friends since Cambridge. At least, that was what I believed. My father named him trustee of my fortune and temporary guardian of Willowmere until I reached 25 or married. How old are you now? 22. And the marriage to Julian Fenn would have ended Hartley's control. Yes. Upon my marriage, an independent accounting was required before the trust could be transferred. Isambard understood the shape of the theft more clearly. So Hartley needed to prevent the marriage without appearing responsible for preventing it. He first encouraged Julian's attention. I thought it was because he wished me to be happy. Did you love Fenn? The question escaped before he could decide whether he had a right to ask it. Evangeline turned toward the window. I believed I did. It was not quite an answer, but the slight tightening of her mouth told him enough. Julian was kind when kindness cost him nothing, she continued. He brought me books, listened when I spoke of Willowmere, and promised I would never again feel like a guest in another person's home. I mistook attention for character. That is not an uncommon error. You do not sound surprised. I have seen men perform virtue very well, while an audience remained. Her gaze returned to him. And when the audience leaves, they become themselves. Evangeline folded her hands in her lap. 3 months ago, I found a letter among Sir Rowland's papers, authorizing the sale of timber from Willowmere. The trees were worth nearly £5,000, yet no payment appeared in the estate accounts. When I questioned him, he said the money had been reinvested. Was it? No. I wrote privately to the bank in London. Their reply mentioned 2 withdrawals. I had never approved £4,800 and £7,250. The figures on the fragment. Yes, I copied them before Sir Rowland entered the library. He took the letter from me and accused me of violating his confidence. What happened next? He became affectionate. Isambard's eyes narrowed. It frightened me more than anger would have done, she said. He apologized. He said my concern proved I was ready to manage my own affairs. Then he proposed that Julian and I marry within the month. He wanted the marriage accelerated after you discovered the missing money. At first, I thought he meant to conceal the irregularities beneath a rushed settlement. But Julian suddenly insisted the wedding be delayed, because Hartley had already spent more than he could replace before an accounting. She nodded. A week later, Lady Cecily invited me to dine at Ashcombe House. During dinner, a servant brought word that Julian wished to speak with me privately in the blue drawing-room. When I entered, he was waiting without his coat or cravat. Isambard's face hardened. I tried to leave, but the door had been locked from the corridor. Julian caught my wrist when I called for help. He told me to remain quiet and promised the scene would appear innocent if I obeyed him. Her fingers moved unconsciously toward the bruises. Then Lady Cecily opened the door with Sir Rowland and 3 other guests behind her. Julian released me and claimed I had arranged the meeting, and Hartley believed him. He did not need to believe him. He helped arrange it. The carriage struck a rut. Evangeline caught the edge of the seat, and Isambard reached forward instinctively. He stopped before touching her. She noticed. I was taken back to Hartley Court that night, she continued. Sir Rowland dismissed my maid and locked me in my room. By morning, letters had already been sent throughout the county. Julian ended our engagement publicly. Lady Cecily declared that she had witnessed my misconduct and the accusation of theft. That came when I demanded the accounts. Sir Rowland produced a silver button and 2 banknotes from my writing desk. He claimed they had disappeared from his study. I had never seen them before. The button carried by Rudge was meant to repeat the same trick. Yes, if it had been found in my dress at Marlow Cross, people would have said theft was simply my nature. Isambard sat very still. His anger had none of the heat Evangeline associated with Sir Rowland. It was colder and more deliberate, as if each fact were being placed inside him, where it would later become action. What did Hartley do when you refused to confess? He struck me. The words were quiet. The Duke looked at the fading bruise upon her face. Once? She did not answer. His hand closed around the silver head of his walking cane. Once? He repeated. Does the number change what he did? No. Then it does not matter. It matters to me. The force beneath the words made her look up. Isambard released the cane before his anger frightened her. But you are right. You need not count your injuries for my satisfaction. Evangeline studied him for a moment. He struck me twice. The first time when I accused him of stealing my inheritance. The second, when I told him I knew of the codicil, and then he cast you out. He gave me until sunrise to sign a confession, surrendering all claim to the missing funds. I refused. He ordered 2 servants to place me beyond the gates. Without money, without even a cloak. Fen did nothing? I went to him first. He would not receive me. Lady Cecily, she sent a servant to say that a respectable widow could not associate with a woman of my reputation. Your aunt? I tried to reach her, but Hartley's men stopped the hired cart and warned the driver that he would lose his license if he carried me farther. Isambard turned his face toward the window. For several seconds, he said nothing. Evangeline had seen that silence before in men who disapproved of a woman's failure to endure gracefully. She prepared herself for questions about why she had not gone to the law or appealed to another guardian. Instead, he asked, "How many doors? I beg your pardon? How many doors did you knock upon before I found you?" Her throat tightened. 7, and every one remained closed. One house allowed me to stand in the kitchen until the rain eased. When the owner learned my name, she asked me to leave by the servants' entrance. Isambard's gaze returned to her. "You will remember those 7 doors. Why? So that when the people behind them eventually come to Vexine Abbey, asking to express their regret, you may decide which remain closed." A startled laugh escaped her. It was brief, but real. The Duke felt the sound somewhere beneath his ribs. By midday, the weather cleared. Vexine Abbey appeared beyond a long rise, its grey towers standing above dark woodland and broad fields washed clean by rain. The house had once been a monastery before an ancestor of Isambard's transformed it into a fortified country seat. Ivy covered the western walls, and tall windows reflected the pale spring sun. Evangeline expected grandeur. She did not expect life. Farm carts moved along the lower road. Children ran beside a stream beneath the bridge. A group of tenants repairing a stone wall raised their caps when the ducal carriage passed, and Isambard lowered the window to return the greeting. "They do not appear afraid of you," she observed. "Should they? The county speaks of you as though you breakfast upon the bones of disobedient tenants." "Only on Thursdays." Her mouth curved before she could prevent it. As the carriage entered the courtyard, the great front doors opened. A line of servants gathered beneath the portico, but Isambard dismissed them with one glance before the formal welcome could begin. An older woman in black remained at the top of the steps. Her silver hair was arranged with severe precision, and a ring of household keys hung from her waist. "Mrs. Wren," Isambard said, after helping Evangeline descend without touching her injured wrist. "This is Miss Garland. She will occupy the east rooms." Mrs. Wren's gaze moved over the borrowed dress, bruised cheek, and Duke's cloak. "No," she said. Evangeline stiffened. Isambard's eyebrows rose. "No?" "The east rooms have not been properly aired since Christmas. Miss Garland will take the blue suite overlooking the inner garden. That suite adjoins mine. Then your grace will discover the use of doors." Hollis looked away to hide his amusement. Mrs. Wren approached Evangeline. Unlike the curious servants behind her, she did not stare at the bruises. "Would you prefer a maid immediately? Or would you like to be alone first?" The question was so unexpected that Evangeline needed a moment to answer. "Alone, please." "Then you shall be alone. When you want assistance, pull the bell twice. 1 ring will bring a footman, and I assume you have had enough of strange men approaching doors." Evangeline looked toward Isambard. He had told the housekeeper nothing in her presence, yet the household already seemed to understand that her choices mattered. "Thank you," she said. Mrs. Wren personally escorted her upstairs. The blue suite contained a sitting room, bedchamber, dressing room, and a small private library. Fresh flowers stood upon the tables. A fire had been lit, and dresses in several sizes had been laid across the bed. "These belong to the Duke's cousin," Mrs. Wren explained. "She leaves half her wardrobe here whenever she visits and remembers none of it. You may use what fits. I cannot accept. You may return them when your own belongings arrive." "My belongings will not arrive." Mrs. Wren's face did not soften, but her voice did. "Then we shall consider that problem tomorrow." After the housekeeper withdrew, Evangeline locked the door. She leaned against it and listened to the quiet. No one shouted in the corridor. No key turned from the other side. No footsteps stopped outside to determine whether she was crying. She crossed the room and opened the door again. The small act left her trembling. For the first time since Hartley Court, She stood in a chamber she could leave whenever she wished. She washed, changed into a dark blue wool gown, and attempted to rest. Sleep would not come. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw Sir Rowland's letter threatening her aunt. At last, she walked to the window. Below, the Duke stood in the courtyard, receiving reports from his riders. He listened to the first man, gave an order, then turned toward the house. As though sensing her attention, he looked up. Evangeline stepped back from the glass. A knock sounded moments later. "Miss Garland," Mrs. Wren called. "His Grace asks whether you will receive him in your sitting room. Not commands. Choices." Evangeline opened the door. "Yes." Isambard entered carrying the sealed water bottle from Mrs. Bell. He placed it upon a table and remained standing. "My men reached your aunt's cottage. Is she safe?" "She is not there." The fragile calm of the room shattered. "What happened?" "There was no sign of violence. Her neighbors say she departed yesterday in a hired carriage after receiving a letter bearing your name." "My name?" "They believed you had summoned her." "I sent no letter." "I know." Evangeline pressed one hand against the chair. "Sir Rowland has her." "Perhaps." But the carriage did not travel toward Hartley Court. Where did it go? South, toward Bellwether Lane. Julian's address. The Duke placed another object on the table, a torn envelope recovered from the cottage hearth. The red wax seal had been broken, but enough remained to reveal the impression of a small bird with spread wings. Evangeline recognized it. Julian's private seal. He lured your aunt away before Hartley sent the threat. Then Sir Rowland may not know where she is, which means Hartley and Fenn are no longer acting with complete trust. The discovery changed the danger. If Julian had taken Anne without informing Sir Rowland, he was pursuing an interest of his own. Evangeline picked up the envelope. "My aunt knows about the codicil." Isambard's expression sharpened. "How much?" "My father asked her to witness it." "Then she is not merely leverage. She can authenticate the document. And Julian knows." A new fear entered her voice. He will force her to deny the signature or ensure she never has the opportunity to confirm it. Isambard crossed to the bell and rang once. Hollis entered almost immediately. "Prepare 6 men and an unmarked carriage," the Duke said. "We leave for Bellwether Lane within the hour." Evangeline stepped forward. "I am coming." "No." Her face closed. He saw it and corrected himself. "The people at number 14 know you. If they see you before we locate your aunt, they may move or harm her. You can help us more effectively from here." "How?" "Tell me everything about Julian's house. Entrances, servants, habits, adjoining properties, anything that will allow us to reach Mrs. Garland without announcing ourselves." The barrier between them eased. Evangeline moved to the writing table and drew a quick plan from memory. Julian occupied a narrow London-style townhouse used by the Fenn family during county assemblies. A lane ran behind the stables. A conservatory connected the garden to the morning room, and an old coal passage opened beside the neighboring wall. "He never locks the conservatory during daylight," she said. "He considers the village too respectable for thieves. His opinion of respectability appears selective." She marked the upper floor. "My aunt may be kept in this chamber. It is the only guest room whose windows do not face the street." Isambard studied the plan. "You notice details. When one lives in another person's house, it is wise to know every exit." The words carried more history than she intended. He folded the map carefully. "I will bring her back." "You cannot promise that." "No, then do not." He met her gaze. "I will do everything within my power to bring her back. That I can believe." The Duke turned to leave. "Your Grace." He paused. "Isambard," she corrected, surprising herself. "If Julian is there, do not let your anger warn him before you find my aunt." The use of his name affected him more than it should have. "I have survived many years by ensuring my anger is useful." He departed before she could see how deeply her concern had reached him. An hour later, Evangeline watched from the window as the unmarked carriage left Vexine Abbey. She remained beside the glass until it disappeared among the trees. Only then did she notice movement near the old chapel at the edge of the grounds. A woman in a green travelling veil stood beneath the yew trees. For 1 second, the stranger looked directly toward Evangeline's window. Then she turned and entered the chapel. Evangeline pulled the bell twice. No maid came. She rang again. The corridor remained silent. A folded note slid beneath her door. She did not touch it until she had wrapped a handkerchief around her fingers. The paper bore no seal and contained a single sentence. If the Duke reaches Bellwether Lane, your aunt will die before he enters the house. Below the warning, someone had drawn a small crescent in dark ink. Lady Cecily had not remained safely at Ashcombe House. She had followed Evangeline to Vexine Abbey, and while Isambard rode toward one trap, the woman behind the green veil was already inside his walls. Evangeline read the warning twice, then carried it to the window. The chapel door had closed behind the woman in the green veil. No one moved among the yew trees, yet the silence below felt deliberate, as though the stranger were waiting to see what Evangeline would do. The easiest choice was to send a rider after Isambard. It was also the choice the note expected. If Lady Cecily had truly gained access to Vexine Abbey, she could not have done so alone. Someone had prevented the maid from answering the bell. Someone knew when the Duke departed and which room Evangeline occupied. The threat might have been designed to make her panic, empty the house of more guards, or ride after Isambard and expose herself upon the road. She would not give them that advantage. Evangeline folded the note and concealed it inside her sleeve. Then she opened the bedroom door. The corridor remained empty. Mrs. Wren? No answer came. She stepped into the passage and tried the door opposite hers. It opened into an unused bedchamber. The next led to a linen room. Beyond it, a narrow servant's stair descended toward the eastern courtyard. A faint chemical sweetness hung in the air. Laudanum. Evangeline covered her mouth with her sleeve and moved more carefully. At the first landing, she found the young maid who should have answered the bell. The girl lay slumped against the wall with a cleaning cloth beside her hand. Evangeline knelt and touched her throat. A pulse beat beneath her fingers. The maid had not been struck. A wet patch darkened the cloth near her face, and the same sweet odor rose from it. Someone had pressed the drugged fabric over her mouth, then left her where she would not be discovered from the main staircase. Evangeline pulled the girl into the open air of a nearby gallery and loosened her collar. She wanted to call for help, but the attacker might still be close enough to hear. A door clicked below. Footsteps moved toward the old chapel passage. Evangeline stood. At Hartley Court, she had spent years learning which servants carried information, which doors stuck in damp weather, and which footsteps belonged to which members of the household. Fear sharpened that old habit now. The steps below were light, but not hurried. A woman confident that the house had been cleared for her. Evangeline descended to the next landing. Through the carved balustrade, she saw a green veil disappear around the corner. Lady Cecily was heading toward the western library, not the outer gate. The chapel appearance had been meant to draw Evangeline's attention. The note had been meant to hold her inside her room. While she waited in fear, the intruder intended to search the Duke's house. For what? Isambard had taken Julian's payment note with him. Rudge remained under guard in the stable wing. The only evidence still in Evangeline's possession was the torn account fragment. She touched the hidden pocket inside her borrowed gown. The fragment was there. Lady Cecily could not know that Evangeline carried it rather than leaving it in her room, unless the woman sought something else, something connected to the Duke. Evangeline followed. The Western Library occupied a long chamber overlooking the river. Its doors stood slightly open. A sliver of green fabric showed beyond the gap. Evangeline heard drawers opening. She crossed to a bell pull in the adjoining gallery and tugged it once. Nothing sounded. The cord had been cut. Lady Cecily had planned her route carefully. Evangeline looked toward a glass-fronted cabinet displaying several old pistols. The cabinet was locked, and she would not have known whether the weapons were loaded, even if she could reach them. A bronze candlestick stood on a side table. She lifted it with both hands. It was not a weapon worthy of a heroic rescue, but it was heavy enough to break a window or a wrist. Inside the library, paper rustled. You were always cleverer than Sir Roland understood. Lady Cecily's voice came through the open doors. Evangeline stopped. You may enter, the woman continued. I know you are there. Running would expose her back. Remaining hidden would accomplish nothing. Evangeline pushed the doors open. Lady Cecily stood behind Isambard's desk with her veil thrown back. She was a handsome woman, in her late 40s, elegantly dressed despite the journey. One grey glove covered her left hand. Her right hand was bare, revealing the crescent-shaped birthmark near the thumb. She held several papers taken from the Duke's locked drawer. You drugged a maid, Evangeline said. She will awaken with a headache. Spare me the moral outrage. You also drugged me at Marlow Cross. Only enough to ensure you slept. Rudge was instructed not to harm you. He entered my room while I was unconscious. A regrettable necessity. For whom? Lady Cecily smiled. Put down the candlestick. If you intended to strike me, you would not still be holding it like a vase. Evangeline adjusted her grip. Perhaps I am waiting until you come closer. The smile faded slightly. You have changed. I spent 3 days learning what becomes of women who wait politely for other people to protect them. Lady Cecily placed the stolen papers upon the desk. The Duke has filled your head with dangerous confidence. The Duke has done nothing except listen, and that is all it took. Evangeline understood the bitterness beneath the question. Lady Cecily had spent years in rooms where men made decisions, and women survived by manipulating which decision seemed most attractive. She could not comprehend a man who simply listened to a woman's account and allowed her to act. What are you searching for? Evangeline asked. A letter. From whom? Julian. You threatened my aunt in his name. No, that was Sir Rowland. The answer came too quickly to be a lie. Evangeline lowered the candlestick by an inch. Sir Rowland believes Julian took her. He suspects. Suspicion is not knowledge. Where is she? Safe for the moment. At Bellwether Lane. Lady Cecily glanced toward the clock. It was a tiny movement, but Evangeline saw it. No, she said. The Duke is riding toward an empty house. Then he will be disappointed. Julian wanted him away from Vexine Abbey. Lady Cecily's composure tightened. The truth became clear. The address impressed upon Rudge's payment note had been planted. Julian expected the Duke to discover it, leave his estate, and take his strongest men. Lady Cecily would then enter Vexine Abbey to recover whatever evidence she could find. But if Bellwether Lane was a decoy, where had they taken Anne? Evangeline remembered the carriage route reported by the Duke's rider. South toward Bellwether Lane, not necessarily into the village. What lies south of my aunt's cottage? She asked aloud. Bellwether Lane, the old mill road, and Ashcombe House. Lady Cecily's eyes changed. My aunt is at Ashcombe. You are guessing. Your brother's house provides servants, locked rooms, and a respectable explanation for any carriage entering after dark. Lord Ashcombe is elderly and nearly blind. Julian could use the property without his knowledge. Lady Cecily moved one hand toward her reticule. Evangeline raised the candlestick. Keep your hand where I can see it. You would strike an unarmed woman. You taught me how little the appearance of innocence proves. For the first time, fear entered Lady Cecily's face. It vanished quickly, replaced by contempt. You believe the Duke can restore you. Even if he exposes Sir Rowland's accounts, the county will remember what it saw at Ashcombe House. Julian was found half-dressed with you in a locked room. My testimony stands. Rudge places you in the conspiracy. Rudge is a hired criminal attempting to save himself. The payment note leads to Julian. A few words written upon paper prove nothing. The silver button proves that evidence was planted. It proves Rudge possessed a button. Each answer was ready. Lady Cecily had built the scandal so that every separate piece could be dismissed. Evangeline tightened her fingers around the candlestick. Then why are you here? The question struck harder than accusation. Lady Cecily remained silent. If the evidence proves nothing, why drug a maid and search the Duke's desk? Why send a man through my window? Why threaten my aunt? Innocent people do not work this hard to recover meaningless scraps. You are still the word of one disgraced girl against established families. No, I am the reason those families are becoming afraid. Footsteps sounded in the gallery. Lady Cecily's head turned. Evangeline did not look away from her. Come in. Mrs. Wren entered with 2 footmen behind her. Her severe black dress was marked with dust, and she carried an iron key in one hand. I found the maid on the landing, she said. She is awake. Lady Cecily moved toward the window. The footmen blocked her path. Mrs. Wren surveyed the open desk and scattered papers. I assume this woman was not invited. She entered through the chapel passage, Evangeline said. Search her reticule before she can destroy anything. Lady Cecily drew herself upright. You cannot search Lady Cecily Ashcombe. Mrs. Wren's expression did not change. Inside this house, madam, I can search the Archbishop of Canterbury if I find him rifling through his Grace's desk. One footman took the reticule. Inside were a small laudanum bottle, a second drugged cloth, a cut length of bell cord, and a letter bearing Julian Fenn's seal. Lady Cecily lunged for it. Evangeline stepped between them. The movement placed her close enough for Lady Cecily to seize her injured wrist. Pain shot up Evangeline's arm. Lady Cecily pulled her forward and snatched the bronze candlestick from her loosened grip. She pressed its heavy base against Evangeline's throat. The footman froze. "Stand back," Lady Cecily ordered. Mrs. Wren remained calm. "If you harm her, you will not leave this house. I need only reach the chapel. You will not." Lady Cecily tightened her hold. For an instant, Evangeline was back in the blue drawing room, with Julian's fingers around her wrist and a locked door behind her. Her body remembered helplessness before her mind could resist it. Then she heard the Duke's words. "It is yours, until you are strong enough to make it entirely yours again." Lady Cecily expected her to become still. That was how frightened women survived respectable violence. They froze, obeyed, and hoped compliance would reduce the damage. Evangeline moved instead. She drove her heel down upon Lady Cecily's foot, twisted toward the woman rather than away, and struck her elbow backward into her ribs. The pressure left her throat. Mrs. Wren caught Evangeline as the footmen seized Lady Cecily. The candlestick hit the carpet. Lady Cecily fought with a fury that stripped away every trace of elegance. "Fool! Do you think this ends with Sir Rowland? Do you imagine Vexine can protect you from every man whose name is written in those accounts?" Evangeline's breathing stopped. "What men?" Lady Cecily realized her error. Mrs. Wren recovered Julian's letter and handed it to Evangeline. The seal had already been broken. Inside, Julian had written only a few lines. "Cecily, search Vexine's desk for correspondence from London. Hartley believes the Duke has contacted Mr. Grey. If Grey has the duplicate codicil, remove the woman from Ashcombe before Vexine learns she is there. Do not trust Hartley. He intends to sacrifice us both. Was die." Evangeline read the name again. Mr. Grey. Her father's solicitor had not disappeared, as Sir Rowland claimed. Julian feared that he possessed a duplicate of the codicil. More important, Anne was indeed at Ashcombe House. "We must send word to the Duke," Mrs. Wren said. "The roads will take too long. By the time a rider reaches Bellwether Lane, Julian may already have moved my aunt. There is a signal station on the North Tower," Mrs. Wren replied. "His Grace established it during the war. On a clear day, flags can carry a short message across 3 estates faster than a horse. Can it reach the Bellwether Road? It can reach the watchpost above Marlow Hill. His Grace's men will pass beneath it." Evangeline looked at Lady Cecily. "What signal will Julian use if he intends to move my aunt?" "I will tell you nothing. Then we will send your carriage to Ashcombe House, with one of our men wearing your driver's coat. Julian will believe you have returned." Lady Cecily's face lost colour. Evangeline continued. "He will either bring my aunt out to meet you, or reveal the room where she is held. You would risk Anne's life on that?" "No. I will give Julian what he believes you recovered." She took a blank sheet from the Duke's desk and folded it inside one of the stolen envelopes. Mrs. Wren understood first. A false letter from Mr. Grey. A letter saying the duplicate codicil will be delivered to Vexine Abbey tomorrow. "Julian will not move my aunt if he believes he needs her alive to dispute it. You cannot imitate a solicitor's hand." "I do not need to. Lady Cecily has not seen the letter she was sent to find. Julian expects only a report." Lady Cecily stared at her. "You were silent when Julian ruined you," she said. "You stood in that room and said almost nothing. No one there intended to hear me. And now?" Evangeline folded the false message and sealed it with wax from the Duke's desk. "Now I choose the room." Within 15 minutes, 3 signals rose from the North Tower. The first warned Isambard that Bellwether Lane was a decoy. The second named Ashcombe House. The third consisted of 2 words Mrs. Wren said the Duke would understand. "Trust Evangeline." Far to the south, Isambard's carriage had just entered Bellwether Lane when Hollis saw the coloured flags moving above Marlow Hill. He ordered the driver to stop. Through a field glass, he read the sequence and handed it to the Duke. Isambard looked once toward the quiet house at number 14. Its shutters were closed. No carriage tracks marked the wet ground before its door. A trap. He unfolded Evangeline's map and traced the road west toward Ashcombe. "She discovered it," Hollis said. Isambard read the final signal again. Trust, Evangeline. A strange pride moved through him, followed immediately by alarm. If she had uncovered the deception after he left, the danger was already inside Vexine Abbey. Send 2 men back, he ordered. To Ashcombe House. Yes. The carriage turned sharply. As it raced west, Isambard looked through the rear window toward the distant towers of his home. He had promised Evangeline no one would reach her again, yet someone had entered his house within hours. For the first time since finding her on the road, his fear was not that she would fail to survive her enemies. It was that she would face them without him and learn she no longer needed him at all. At Vexine Abbey, Lady Cecily was locked inside a guarded chamber, while her confiscated carriage rolled toward Ashcombe House, carrying the false report. Evangeline stood beside Mrs. Wren at the North Tower window and watched it disappear. You should rest, the housekeeper said. I have spent 3 days being told to wait, while other people decided my future. And what will you do instead? Evangeline looked toward the distant road. I am going to Hartley Court. Mrs. Wren turned sharply. His Grace, expressly. The Duke has ridden to Ashcombe. Julian and Lady Cecily are occupied. Sir Rowland believes his threat has drawn our attention toward my aunt. This may be the only hour when the blue cabinet is unguarded. You cannot enter that house alone. I do not intend to. Evangeline glanced toward the stable wing where Rudge remained under guard. He knows the servants' entrance, the patrols, and the room where Sir Rowland keeps the cabinet. He also knows Hartley will kill him if the truth remains hidden. You propose taking a criminal back to the man who hired him. I propose giving him a choice. Mrs. Wren studied her for a long moment. The Duke will be furious. Yes. He may dismiss every person who assists you. Will that stop you? Mrs. Wren took the ring of household keys from her waist and selected one marked with a small iron cross. No, she said. But if we are to disobey His Grace, we shall do it efficiently. She placed the key in Evangeline's hand. It opened the old chapel passage and the concealed gate beyond the eastern wall, the same route Lady Cecily had used to enter. 20 minutes later, Evangeline rode out of Vexine Abbey in a plain servant's cloak. Rudge travelled beside her beneath the watch of 2 armed footmen. Ahead of them, Hartley Court rose beyond the wet trees. Inside its private library waited the cabinet containing her father's last protection, and at an upper window, unseen by the riders, Sir Rowland Hartley watched their approach, with a pistol resting across his open account book. Evangeline saw the upper curtain move as they passed through the outer gates of Hartley Court. Sir Rowland knew they had come. Beside her, Rudge lowered his head beneath the brim of a borrowed hat. 2 Vexine footmen rode several yards behind them, dressed plainly enough to resemble farm workers, but carrying pistols beneath their coats. This is wrong, Rudge muttered. The south gate should be guarded. Perhaps Sir Rowland dismissed the man, Evangeline said. He never leaves it empty. The gate stood open. No servant challenged them. No stable boy emerged when their horses crossed the yard. Hartley Court appeared deserted. Evangeline knew it was not. She had lived within these walls for 5 years and understood how the house sounded when its occupants were away. There should have been windows open to air the rooms, maids calling to one another, and the distant strike of pans from the kitchen. Instead, doors had been closed to contain every sound. He wants us inside, she whispered. Rudge looked toward the road. Then we should leave. The cabinet is inside. So is the man who means to kill me. Evangeline dismounted. You had the opportunity to consider that before entering my room. His face tightened with shame. She did not enjoy frightening him, but neither would she pretend that his fear erased what he had done. He had accepted money to violate an unconscious woman's room and plant false evidence among her clothes. Whatever assistance he offered now could not make him innocent. One of the Vexine men approached. We can return with more guards. By then, Sir Rowland may destroy the cabinet, Evangeline said. His Grace ordered us to keep you safe. His Grace is not here. That will not comfort him if you are harmed. Despite her fear, the answer nearly made her smile. Isambard's servants knew precisely how his anger worked. We will not use the main entrance, she said. Rudge, show us the route taken by the men who carried the cabinet. He led them behind the stables to a narrow delivery door opening into the old laundry. The lock bore fresh scratches. Rudge removed a small iron pick from his boot. One of the footmen seized his wrist. You were searched. I was searched by men who expected knives. The footman took the pick from him and opened the lock himself. They entered. The laundry fires were cold. A basket of damp linen stood abandoned beside a table, and a cup of tea remained half-finished near the ironing press. Everyone had left in haste or been ordered out. Evangeline crossed to the service passage. Sir Roland may have gathered the servants in the front hall, she said. If he intends to accuse us of trespass, he will want witnesses. Then why leave this door unguarded? Asked the footman. A bolt slid behind them. They turned. The laundry door had closed. Rudge rushed back, but the handle would not move. Someone had locked it from the yard. A bell rang once within the house. The signal echoed through the empty passages. They know we are inside, Rudge said. Evangeline's pulse quickened. Sir Roland had allowed them to enter, then sealed the exit. He wanted not only to catch her trespassing, but to control where she went next. Is there another way out? The coal chute, Rudge replied. Too narrow for a man. It will serve if necessary. They moved toward the library. Twice, Evangeline heard footsteps retreat ahead of them. Sir Roland's men were guiding them through the house without revealing themselves. Doors that should have been locked stood open. Corridors leading away from the library had been blocked by heavy furniture. He is building a path, she said. A path to what? Asked the footman. To the accusation he intends to make. The private library door stood at the end of the passage. Light showed beneath it. Evangeline stopped. 3 days earlier, Sir Roland had struck her in that room, torn the account fragment from her hands, and ordered her to sign a confession. The memory did not come as an image. It came as a physical tightening in her throat and a sharp ache beneath her shoulder where she had struck the edge of his desk. She nearly stepped back. Then she remembered the 7 closed doors, the laudanum on the inn-bowl, her aunt hidden at Ashcombe House, and Lady Cecily standing behind Isambard's desk as if Evangeline remained too frightened to oppose her. She opened the library door. Sir Roland sat behind his desk. The blue writing cabinet stood upon a table near the fire. A pistol rested beside his right hand. 2 household servants waited against the wall, and a local constable stood near the window. Evangeline, Sir Roland said. I knew you would return. She kept her hands visible. You arranged for me to. I warned the constable that you might attempt to enter the house and steal documents relating to your trust. He was skeptical until my men saw you crossing the yard with a known criminal. The constable looked uncomfortably toward Rudge. Sir Roland had prepared the scene with the same care used at Ashcombe House. Witnesses, an apparently respectable accusation, and Evangeline standing where he had predicted she would stand. You left every entrance open, she said. This is my home. I am not required to defend an unlocked door from thieves. You locked the door behind us. For the safety of my household. 1 Vexine footman moved forward. The constable reached for his baton. Evangeline raised a hand. No. Sir Roland smiled. He mistook restraint for surrender. You will return the account fragment, he said. Then you will sign a statement admitting that Rudge helped you invent the intrusion at Marlow Cross. In exchange, I may ask the constable to show mercy. Rudge stared at him. You sent me there. Sir Roland's expression remained blank. I have never seen this man before. You paid me. Can you prove it? Rudge looked toward Evangeline. The payment note was with Isambard. Sir Roland knew it. You also instructed Lady Cecily to threaten my aunt, Evangeline said. Lady Cecily has been at Ashcombe House all week. She is currently locked inside Vexine Abbey. For the first time, Sir Roland's confidence faltered. It lasted less than a second. But the constable saw it. Evangeline stepped farther into the room. She was caught searching the Duke's desk. Her reticule contained laudanum, a cut bell cord, and a letter from Julian Fenn. You are lying. Then you have nothing to fear from an inquiry. Sir Roland's hand moved closer to the pistol. The constable noticed. Sir Roland, perhaps we should hear what the young lady has. You were summoned to arrest trespassers. Sir Roland snapped. Do your duty. The constable hesitated. Sir Roland had expected rank to secure obedience. Instead, his impatience made him appear less like a wronged guardian and more like a man desperate to prevent questions. Evangeline turned toward the cabinet. This belonged to my father. It is part of the property entrusted to my management. The hidden drawer contains a codicil, transferring control of my trust if irregularities are discovered in the accounts. There is no hidden drawer. Then you will not object if I examine it. You will not touch that cabinet. The denial came too forcefully. Evangeline took another step. Sir Roland lifted the pistol. Both Vexine footmen drew their weapons. The servants against the wall cried out and moved away. The constable placed himself between Sir Roland and Evangeline. "Put it down, sir. This woman is attempting to rob me. She is unarmed. She has conspired with Vexine to destroy me." "No," Evangeline said. "You destroyed yourself when you chose theft over the duty my father gave you." Sir Roland pointed the pistol past the constable. "You ungrateful little fool. I fed you. I clothed you. I introduced you to society. With money taken from my own estate. You would have squandered it. On what? Restoring Willowmere, repairing the tenants' cottages you allowed to decay, replanting the woodland you sold. You know nothing of managing property. I know enough to recognize an empty account." Rage transformed his face. "Your father should never have left control to a girl. There it was. Not concern, not guardianship, not even desperation. Contempt had made the theft easy." Sir Roland believed Evangeline's fortune belonged more naturally in his hands because she was a young woman and he was a gentleman. Every lie afterward had merely protected a right he imagined he already possessed. Evangeline looked toward the constable. "You heard him." Sir Roland realized his mistake. He swung the pistol toward the cabinet. "If I cannot prevent this farce, I can at least destroy the object causing it." He fired. The shot shattered the cabinet's front panel. Evangeline flinched, but the bullet did not strike the drawer. It lodged in the inner mechanism with a splintering crack. A flame caught upon loose papers stacked beside the cabinet. Rudge rushed forward and smothered them with his coat. One of the Vexine footmen seized Sir Roland's arm, while the constable took the pistol. The other servant brought water from the washstand and extinguished the remaining fire. Smoke filled the room. Evangeline reached the cabinet. A jagged hole had torn through the blue-painted wood. The visible drawers remained closed, but a narrow brass plate had shifted beneath the damaged panel. Her father's mechanism. She pressed the lower corner, turned the small brass flower to the left, and heard a click. A hidden drawer opened from the back. Inside lay a bundle wrapped in faded green silk. Sir Roland stopped struggling. The silence that followed was more complete than any shout could have been. Evangeline unfolded the cloth. The codicil rested inside, bearing her father's signature, Anne Garland's name as witness, and the seal of Aldous Gray's legal office. Beneath it lay 12 letters from Sir Roland to a London broker authorizing sales from Willowmere. Each named the amount received. Each directed payment into a private account. The missing figures represented only the beginning. Evangeline added the sums quickly. £22,000 had been removed from her trust. Timber had been sold, rents diverted, and securities transferred. Sir Roland had not merely borrowed money in desperation, he had dismantled her future piece by piece. The constable read the first letter, then the second. "Sir Roland, these require explanation. You cannot arrest me upon the word of a disgraced woman. I am looking at your signature. Forgery. The papers came from your cabinet. She placed them there." Evangeline held up the codicil. "You just fired a pistol to prevent me from opening it." Sir Roland looked toward the servants, but neither would meet his eyes. His own trap had provided the witnesses against him. The constable lowered his voice. "You must accompany me. I am a baronet, and I am an officer of the county. You serve at the appointment of men like me. Not today." Sir Roland's face went grey. Evangeline should have felt triumph. Instead, she felt hollow. The man before her had eaten at her father's table, carried her mother's coffin, and promised beside 2 graves that she would always have a home. He had sold that promise for £22,000. Sir Roland looked at her. "If I fall, you fall with me. The county will still believe what happened at Ashcombe House. Then I will clear my name as I have cleared these accounts. Julian will never confess. He may not need to. You think the Duke will marry you and silence the gossip?" Heat rose to Evangeline's face, not because she expected such an offer, but because Sir Roland reduced every form of protection to possession by another man. "My future is not another bargain for you to calculate. Without Vexine, you are nothing." The words entered the room and remained there. Evangeline looked at the evidence in her hands. 3 days ago, she might have believed him. Without a guardian, fiancé, fortune, or reputation, she had imagined herself erased. Now Rudge had risked Hartley's anger to guide her through the house. Vexine's servants stood armed at her side. A constable was reading documents she had uncovered through her own knowledge of the cabinet. The Duke had helped her, but he had not created her strength. He had simply been the first person to give it room. Without the Duke, she said, I would still be the woman who found your missing accounts. That is why you were afraid of me before he ever knew my name. Sir Rowland had no answer. The constable ordered one of the servants to fetch restraints. A hoofbeat sounded from the yard, then another. Within moments, several riders entered the courtyard at speed. A man shouted for the front doors to be opened. One Vexine footman moved to the window. It is Hollis. Evangeline's relief came so swiftly that her knees weakened. And the Duke? Not with them. Hollis entered the library carrying dust from the road upon his coat. He took in the shattered cabinet, the constable, and Sir Rowland's restrained hands. Miss Garland, are you injured? No. My aunt. His Grace reached Ashcombe House before Julian could move her. Mrs. Garland is safe. Evangeline closed her eyes. For the first time since receiving Sir Rowland's threat, she could breathe fully. Where is Isambard? Hollis hesitated. The relief vanished. What happened? Julian attempted to escape through the stable yard, with Mrs. Garland in his carriage. His Grace stopped him. And? Fenn fired. The room tilted around her. Was the Duke hit? The ball struck his shoulder. He remained standing long enough to pull Fenn from the carriage and free your aunt. Evangeline gripped the edge of the table. Where is he now? Being taken to Vexine Abbey. Dr. Mercer has been summoned. Is the wound dangerous? I do not know. The codicil slipped from her fingers onto the green silk. She had recovered her father's protection. Sir Rowland stood exposed. Her aunt was free, yet the only thought in her mind was of Isambard riding toward Ashcombe because she had asked him to bring Anne home. Sir Rowland watched her face and understood. So, he said bitterly, the great Duke bleeds after all. Evangeline turned. She had never hated Sir Rowland more than in that instant, but she refused to grant him the satisfaction of seeing it. She gathered the codicil and the letters. You told me I was nothing without a powerful man, she said. Yet every powerful man in your conspiracy is falling, because none of you believed a woman would keep looking. She walked from the library without waiting to see him taken away. Hollis followed her to the yard. A carriage had already been prepared. Evangeline climbed inside with the evidence secured against her chest. Drive as fast as the road allows. The horses surged forward. Hartley Court disappeared behind the trees, carrying Sir Rowland, the broken cabinet, and the last remains of the life she had once believed she needed. Ahead lay Vexine Abbey, and somewhere on that road, Isambard was bleeding because he had kept his promise to a woman he had known for less than 2 days. Evangeline pressed one hand against the cold carriage window and whispered the words she had been too frightened to speak when he left. Come back to me. Evangeline's carriage reached Vexine Abbey at dusk. The main courtyard blazed with torchlight. Servants hurried between the house and the gate, carrying basins, blankets, and medical supplies. An unfamiliar carriage stood before the steps, its wheels streaked with blood. Evangeline was out of her carriage before the footman could lower the step. Mrs. Wren met her beneath the portico. He is alive, the housekeeper said immediately. The words stopped Evangeline's panic from becoming visible. How badly is he hurt? Dr. Mercer removed the ball. It passed through the upper shoulder without striking the bone. But His Grace lost a great deal of blood. Is he conscious? He was. Evangeline gripped the bundle of documents more tightly. And my aunt? In the morning room. She refuses to rest until she sees you. Anne Garland reached the entrance before Evangeline could take another step. Her bonnet was gone, her grey hair had fallen loose, and bruises marked one side of her face. Neither woman spoke. Evangeline crossed the remaining distance and threw her arms around her. Anne held her so tightly that the recovered papers pressed between them. I thought you were dead, Anne whispered. I tried to reach you. I know. The driver told me. Hartley's men turned you away. They used a letter in my name to take you. Julian claimed you had been injured and brought to Ashcombe House. I believed him, until he locked the carriage door. Evangeline pulled back. Did he hurt you? He frightened me. That is not the same thing. The answer was pure and defiant even while her hands shook. What did he want? The codicil. He demanded that I swear your father had signed it after his mind failed. Would anyone have believed that? Perhaps. Your father's fever affected him near the end. Julian intended to claim the document had been created during his delirium. Evangeline showed her the recovered codicil. Anne touched her signature. "This is valid," she said. "Your father signed it before the fever. Mr. Gray and I witnessed it together. Mr. Gray kept a duplicate." "He did. Your father feared Sir Rowland had begun using money from the trust. Mr. Gray went to Scotland after receiving threats, but he wrote to me last month. He intends to return with the duplicate." Evangeline's relief was tempered by one unanswered question. "Why did you not tell me? I tried. Every letter I sent through Hartley Court vanished. The conspiracy had isolated them both. Sir Rowland controlled Evangeline's post. Julian watched Anne's cottage, and Lady Cecily's standing ensured that any accusation sounded like ingratitude from two dependent women." Anne looked toward the staircase. "The Duke saved my life." "What happened?" "Julian tried to take me from Ashcombe House when the false message arrived. His carriage was waiting in the rear yard. Then the Duke came through the stable gate." Evangeline could picture Isambard's face when he discovered she had been right. "He ordered Julian to release me." Julian laughed and said no court would believe the word of a ruined girl, a frightened widow, and a hired criminal. Then he fired. Not immediately. The Duke told him he had one final chance to step away from the choice he had made. Evangeline remembered Isambard's insistence that actions mattered most at the moment a person could still choose differently. "Julian raised the pistol," Anne continued. "The Duke moved between us. The first shot struck him. He still crossed the yard and pulled Julian from the carriage before the man could fire again." Evangeline's eyes burned. She had known Isambard for less than 3 days. In that time, he had listened when others condemned her, sheltered her without demanding trust, respected each boundary she set, and taken a bullet meant to prevent the truth from emerging. Where is Julian now? Locked in the South Tower. The Ashcombe servants saw everything. And Lord Ashcombe? He knew nothing. When he learned what his wife and nephew had done beneath his roof, he ordered Julian restrained and opened every room to the Duke's men. The matter now reached farther than stolen money. There were witnesses to the abduction, the shot, and Julian's attempt to escape. Lady Cecily had been captured with the drug and incriminating correspondence. Sir Rowland's accounts and the codicil had been recovered in the presence of a constable. For the first time, the truth did not depend upon Evangeline convincing someone to trust her. It could stand on its own. She placed the documents in Anne's hands. "Keep these until the Duke's solicitor arrives. Do not give them to anyone else." "Where are you going?" "To see Isambard." Anne studied her face. "The Duke, Isambard." Understanding entered her aunt's expression. Evangeline did not wait to explain it. Dr. Mercer emerged from the Duke's chamber as she reached the upper corridor. Blood stained the physician's cuffs, and fatigue lined his face. "Can I see him? He needs sleep." "Is he awake?" "He has refused laudanum because he believes the entire household will collapse if he closes his eyes." "That sounds like him." Dr. Mercer glanced toward the room. 5 minutes. If he attempts to rise, call me. Do not assist him, merely because he commands it." Evangeline entered quietly. The curtains had been closed, and a single lamp burned near the bed. Isambard lay against white pillows, with his left shoulder wrapped in heavy bandages. Without his coat and controlled posture, he looked younger and more human, and far more vulnerable than she was prepared to see. His eyes opened. "Evangeline." Her name emerged rough with pain. She crossed the room, then stopped beside the chair rather than the bed. "You went to Hartley Court. It was not a question. Hollis told you?" "Mrs. Wren confessed before I could have her arrested for mutiny." "You would never dismiss her." "No. That is why she continues to disobey me." He tried to lift himself. Evangeline placed one hand gently against his uninjured shoulder. "Do not." His body became still beneath her touch. "You are safe?" he asked. "I am unharmed. Sir Rowland is in custody. We recovered the codicil, the letters authorizing the sales from Willowmere, and the private account into which he transferred the money." Pride warmed his tired expression. "You did it." "We did." "No." His voice strengthened, despite the pain. "My men guarded a door. The constable witnessed what was before him. You entered the house, opened the cabinet, and forced Hartley to expose himself. Do not surrender your victory merely because other people stood nearby." Her throat tightened. "You recovered my aunt. That was my victory. You were shot. That was Julian's poor decision." Do not make light of it. I am not. The physician assures me I shall suffer greatly, complain even more, and survive. You could have died. The fear she had contained throughout the journey broke through the words. Isambard's expression changed. I did not. But you could have. So could you at Hartley Court. That is different. How? Because… She stopped. Because his life mattered more to her than she knew how to admit. Because the thought of Vexine Abbey, without him, had become unbearable before she had spent even one night beneath its roof. Because safety had taken the shape of a stern man standing several paces away, allowing her to choose whether to accept his cloak. Isambard watched the truth move across her face. He did not force her to name it. You told Mrs. Wren to send the signal, he said. Yes. Trust Evangeline. She chose the wording. I doubt that. Despite herself, Evangeline smiled. He lifted his right hand from the coverlet. The motion invited nothing, demanded nothing. She placed her hand in his. His fingers closed carefully around hers. For several moments, neither spoke. I was angry when Hollis told me you had gone to Hartley Court, he said. I expected you would be. I intended to tell you that it was reckless, dangerous, and entirely contrary to my instructions. And now, it was still reckless and dangerous. But you saw an opportunity I did not. Had you waited, Hartley would have destroyed the cabinet. Evangeline sat in the chair beside him. That sounded almost like an apology. Do not become accustomed to them. I shall record the date. His thumb moved once across her knuckles. I am sorry. The sincerity erased her amusement. For what? For promising no one would reach you again. Lady Cecily entered my house while you were beneath my protection. You could not have known she had help inside. I should have known. You gave me people who listened, doors I could open, and the freedom to act. That protected me more than locking every gate. The words settled between them. Isambard had spent most of his life believing safety came from control. He arranged men, money, and influence into barriers no enemy